This event is organized by the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, by the Cool Coalition, and Train and the NDC partnership. We're going to be a little bit flexible in how much time we take today. So it could be an event between 60 to 90 minutes, but I know that, that Kennedy has to leave, so we'll play it by ear and let's get all the main things said, and then we'll close when we need it. So how many of you have followed the negotiations? Are you in there fairly well? Okay, so you know that finance is really the big ticket item. And when you're short on finance, what should you do? You should focus on where you get the biggest results. And the biggest results, where can you find them? You can find them in the buildings and cooling sector. So this is where we can deliver on adaptation, we can deliver development, we can deliver on mitigation. So we can deliver a triple whammy of a result with with solutions that are readily available, they're investable, they start making a good return on those investments, they save life, they maintain productivity, and these cooling and building solutions are really super solutions that we need to tell governments, the negotiators, that there is this great opportunity that we have here. Any good solution can also be a problem. So if we don't fix building and cooling, it can increase energy demand, there can be leakage of refrigerant, there can be very poor quality buildings, which doesn't have a good thermal envelopes, and so on. So we really need to pay attention to this area. And that's why I'm now standing here in front of the air conditioning, because we have all experienced that it is actually really hot. So like this type of envelope, this building, is not really conducive for a good thermal comfort. And this AC is actually not really even cooling us here today. It was better yesterday, right? Good. So the good news is that there's plenty of solutions there, and we'll hear about that today. And these solutions, research say that they could reduce emissions by 1.3 gigaton, and they could save the global economy $1.5 to $3 trillion. Those are already numbers that are so high that it's hard for most people to understand the magnitude of those numbers. So today we will be looking at the alignment between NDCs and cooling plans. And for UNEP, this is a really important work area, because we can see that bringing peoples together, bringing the practitioners, the private sector together, there's a lot of things we can gain here. And another good thing is that we already have plenty of data. There's plenty of tools that you can directly download and use in national progress or planning process. And that's why we're here today. We want to hear from our panelists and speakers on your experiences and how you're advancing the helping people with thermal comfort that can be both a mitigation and adaptation solution. And first I would like to invite Scott Chu, for the Global Head and Vice President for Sustainability Strategies at the Train Technology. And Scott, if you can help us kick off, and that's the coolest spot there if you want to take that one.
This one. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to all of you, and to our distinguished guests, thank you for joining us as well. I think this is an important discussion. I'm happy to be here representing Train Technologies, one of the world's largest cooling companies. Unfortunately, there's not enough of Train Technologies here in Belém this week, so I wish there were more. As my friend Jim Wolf, good to see you, Jim. There's a few things that I wanted to say in the opening today. One is I wanted to talk about extreme heat. I know it's been on some of your minds this week, not just because we're all so warm, but because it is becoming an international priority for all of us, and it directly is associated with the built environment. And it's really good that we have a session today about aligning the NDCs with the International Cooling Plan. It's a really important point. It's a really important moment that we think about how those two to come together. NDCs connecting to cooling plans, because extreme heat is becoming one of the issues of our time that need to be addressed, and we've not spent much time on that until this point. Last year in 2024, more than half the world's population spent more than 30 days in dangerous heat situations. The repercussions of that were not just on their health, but also the implications to the environment they live in. Many times that was associated with things like wildfire, health-related issues, and other concerns, including access to food, certainly access to cooling. I think that cooling has become central to this discussion on climate change. It certainly has become central to our human resilience. We cannot continue in a warming world to live without some form of cooling, whether we're talking technologies that exist today, building designs, and or emerging technologies that could be added to those, such as personal cooling solutions, passive cooling designs. There's a host of solutions that should be considered as we think about going forward. One thing that I wanted to mention is that proven solutions, they do exist today. There was a time not too many years ago when we were not talking about scaling things like fully electrified cooling and heating systems. We think about that very differently today. All across Europe and other parts of the world, we're putting in advanced thermal management systems. These systems many times are 300–400% more efficient than the system that they replace in a retrofit situation. That's significant, one, for the grid. It's also needed if we plan to decarbonize the built environment. We can't decarbonize the built environment without also fixing how we cool and heat ourselves in comfortable environments. We're still burning fossil fuels. 92% of the heat produced in the world is still done by burning fossil fuels, just like we did in the cave 10,000 years ago. We no longer have to do that. All of that can be electrified now into single systems, more energy efficient, fully electrified, and that really works especially on grids that are ready for that. The bigger issue today that we should talk about in terms of the cooling plan is that the partnership is the only way that we'll be able to scale the solutions that exist today. What we need to be spending less time on is thinking about future solutions and waiting on something that may not exist today or still in a pilot phase. What we should be doing is spending our time talking about how we can scale what's available today to provide cooling to a world that's warming, and also to improve the human health and our resilience in those environments that are extremely warm these days. My last point would be just how we go about aligning the NDCs. I think that this alignment that we're talking about in this session, it is the key to accelerating the solutions around existing extreme heat, as well as scaling it for equitably around the world. Some parts of the world have access to the solutions that exist today, some do not. We're in a space here today, this one's more about design than not having access, but the issue is that equitably, the cooling needs of our human existence must be addressed equitably, and that's where the alignment on the NDCs can make a huge difference. So with that, let me say thank you for coming, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Scott. Scott, before I let you off the stage, is there a growing demand for sustainable cooling systems? Do you see that?
Yeah, we absolutely see. The question was about seeing demand. We absolutely see the huge demand for sustainable cooling. Here's the reason. In the past, there was sort of a good, better, best approach to things, and the best was the more sustainable. And so customers had to choose between sustainable, meaning costing more, versus some other option. But we've now blended all of that. We no longer have to think about the most sustainable being the most costly. We can actually find the ROI for sustainable solutions that meets a customer's needs. If you need a 4-year payback, we have found ways to help make that happen for customers that need that. I think that's a game changer, though. No longer do people have to feel like they're having to make a less great decision when they're choosing a solution.
And those solutions that you can provide, you're not just selling it on a sustainability
We're
angle.
not. No, we
It's
don't. Yeah, we're not selling on a sustainability premium at all. We're selling them because it's good for, every customer has a different driver. Some it is cost. Some it may be emissions reductions. Some it may be because they want the latest upgrades to their building, and some it just may be part of the design. No matter what the driver is, though, we can actually customize the system. One of the differences is we don't think about components anymore. We are actually talking about full systems that do a host of things that come with really great controls. We overlay digital with that. Of course, the cooling systems themselves and maybe the combined heating with that. We use heat and cool buildings separately, very inefficient. We now combine all of that into one electrified system. So what we're able to provide now is a much more holistic system or ecosystem of solutions.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And then I would like to invite Amanda McKee, Director for Knowledge and Learning from the NDC Partnership, to join me on the stage. And as we want to connect this into the climate world, into the NDCs, Amanda, I would like to know from you, we have now, as of this morning, 119 NDCs that have been submitted. Are we too late to bringing in the cooling agenda? Or how can you guide us on making sure that cooling solutions, building solutions come in as part of implementing and designing those NDCs?
Thank you. And you stole my first line because I was going to announce that 119 have been submitted, but I think we were maybe hearing the same information. But yeah, 119 have been submitted, which is really fantastic. I know it's not what we expected. It's not what should be submitted, but there's actually a reason behind that we see through the work we do through the NDC partnership, and that's that countries are taking more time to do their NDC document properly. If you look at it from a sectoral perspective, so I'm not a cooling and heating expert, so just to preface that in everything that I'm saying, I'm really coming from an NDC perspective. But if you look at it from a sectoral perspective more broadly, what we're seeing is that in countries' NDCs, they're improving their targets, they're improving the actions so that they're more actionable and relevant, implementable, investable. So of those early NDCs that were submitted, we did a little bit of an analysis, and we looked across 120 different indicators to see how are those NDCs being improved across elements of ambition, quality, and then the process that went into developing them. And I wanted to highlight on quality specifically, because I think we talk about ambition a lot, and we know we have a long way to go still, but the quality thing to me is positive. 75% of the indicators that we looked at on quality show enhancement across NDCs that have been submitted. And that means things like putting in place clear sectoral targets or plans, financial frameworks, institutional mechanisms for implementation. And so this is fundamentally the part of the NDC that helps to ensure that we can take it from a piece of paper to implementation. We're also seeing really strong progress on the process indicators. And I think, again, from a sectoral perspective, this is really important because the NDC itself is developed, it's submitted by the Ministry of Environment, but it's not the Ministry of Environment who implements it. It's the line ministries, it's the Ministry of Finance. And so having those ministries engaged in the NDC development process is non-negotiable. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about some experiences from our next speakers, but it's non-negotiable if you want that NDC to actually turn into action on the ground. So a long way to answer your question. I don't think it's too late, because I think even those NDCs that have been submitted, even if this isn't referenced in these NDC as an opportunity, there are really strong hooks that we're seeing in them that give an opportunity to think, to build into those institutional frameworks, to build into those relationships with the ministries that are engaged in this process, and think about how we can bring this in through the implementation of the NDC, which is also going to need to come with raised ambition. So definitely not too late, but some really positive signs here.
Now that I have you on stage, I'm going to go off script.
Okay.
So when you reviewed those NDCs, did you see anything on cooling? Did you notice, do you know from your colleagues if that stood out?
I'm going to have to get back to you
Okay.
on that one. I can do a quick search when I'm sitting in the audience, but
I'm going to also go off script now. Anybody in the audience that have seen cooling in an NDC? Good. Somalia? Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, Somalia NDC had a section of cooling system in its NDC.
Excellent. And I'm going to come back to that on that. I want to hear more. And Samir, you're also having your hand raised?
Okay, for Nigeria, our NDC 3.0, we recognize the opportunities for cooling that is not just for mitigation, which we addressed, which was targeted in addressing the Kigali Amendment, but now sustainable cooling at large, and also we reference the Global Cooling Pledge, which is cross-cutting, like the objectives of the Global Cooling Pledge commitment is cross-cutting from the building, because Nigeria, we have integrated the construction building sector into our NDC 3.0. So thank you.
Excellent. So we do have two examples. Samir, did you have any?
Yeah, exactly. One quick example that if you look at the cooling from the F-gas perspective, you'll find it over the 130, 120. They already mentioned this, but I will refer to Amanda on the quality. Right now, countries started to realize the importance of cooling from the perspective of its adaptation mitigation. So they started to consider sustainable cooling across all of the sectors, including health, including food, including energy, so like indirect and direct emissions both equally. Also in the NAPs, I know we are off script, but national adaptation plans, it's quite important, really important. And when we scanned the submitted ones so far until now, 67 NAPs have been submitted. Only 20%, only 20 who have mentioned cooling, and 40 overall with just like indirectly, but that's also something important, huh?
Oh, interesting. So there's more NDCs that talk about cooling than there are NAPs talking about cooling. Amanda?
I found some numbers.
Oh.
I was fast. It's not the NDCs, but it's the requests for support that we're receiving through the NDC partnership. So we receive requests for support from our member countries to develop, to implement, to finance their NDCs. So out of 100 countries that have submitted requests for support, 26 of those have submitted some sort of request in the heating and cooling sector. So a quarter of all countries are already looking at this through their implementation.
Okay, so we are on some kind of, we have taken the first baby steps here. This is really good. Amanda, one more question for you. So we have those 119 NDCs. You mentioned that, yeah, there's still room for more details and so on. Any recommendations from your side on how we should go about to really put in and come with the building solutions and the cooling solutions into the implementation of NDCs 3.0?
This is a hard question. It's a really big one. But maybe I can bring it back to basics a little bit, if that's okay.
Or it can also be an example from something else on transport, or so, just so that we could copy and steal good ideas.
So hopefully this is a good idea. We're approaching this similarly across all sectors and all topics, because what we've realized is that there's so many different areas that the NDC can look at, and there's so many transformational projects that can be put in place. In order for that to effectively work, there are certain underlying conditions that we know need to happen, and this is what we're actually focusing on through the NDC partnership. On the countryside, there are things that the country can be thinking about, and none of this is going to be a surprise to anyone. I think we all know, but it's the importance of having high-level ownership and buy-in. So having someone driving that agenda and setting it as a priority. Then the importance of ambitious action. So that can be an ambitious NDC, an implementation plan, an investment plan, but by including that ambitious action, for instance, on heating and cooling, sets a really important signal that we know is needed to move things forward. And then the last one is on the capacity. And so really ensuring that the right people within the ministry are engaged in that process and can push that agenda forward. That's on the country side. On the partner side, because as an NDC partnership, more than half of our partners are institutional partners, associate partners who provide the support. They actually have a huge responsibility in this space. And it's not just responding piecemeal to what's coming through, but ensuring that there is that leadership. And so I think having partners like those who are here today kind of advocating and pushing for these solutions at a high level is really critical. But then also ensuring that there is capacity within your organizations to engage in these processes in countries, and then coming forward with really clear, consistent, predictable support so that countries can tap into that effectively as they think about their long-term transition needs.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda. That concludes that part of the section, and now we'll go into a panel discussion. And sorry for going off script there and putting you in some pressure. Good. So I would like to invite up on the stage with me Dr. Hamedi, Executive Director from the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, RECRE. Thank you, and you can any chair. And Mr. Lida Lund, the Chief and Policy and Coordination Officer, who just happened to be on a phone exactly then. Sorry about that. And you're working with the Department of Climate Change and Minister of Environment from Cambodia. Then I would like to invite Kennedy Mateka, who is with the State Department of Public Works, Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development in Kenya. And I would like to invite Dr. Abdullah Khalif from the NDC Partnership in-country facilitator and advisor for the Ministry of Environment in Somalia. And finally, but not least, Ms. Uboho Ekpo, the Principal Scientific Officer at National Council on Climate Change for the government of Nigeria. Good. Where did the one microphone go? Oh, you have it already. Perfect. Good. So welcome all to the stage, and I would like to start with you, Dr. Hamedi. Based on your experience and your work, what are the major challenges for deploying climate-friendly technologies that you have noticed in your work?
Thank you very much for having me in this very important panel. As you already know, RECRE is a major partner of this initiative. The region, the Arab region, has been going through a very important development in that perspective regarding cooling and the relationship between cooling and NDCs. So if you allow me, just before I answer a question, give a very short brief, situational, if you want, intervention about that. NDCs and cooling are more and more interrelated in the Arab region. Many countries have included their NDCs, cooling into their NDCs, like the UAE, like Egypt, like Lebanon, like Jordan, like Tunisia, like Morocco, for example. In other countries, even if it's not included directly, it is included indirectly by focusing a lot on the energy efficiency in buildings. This is very important because we have to understand that and to know that in the Arab region, buildings consume around 23% or represent 23% of the total final energy consumption in the Arab region. So this is a very important sector. So even if you're not talking directly about cooling, but addressing energy efficiency in buildings will definitely have an impact on cooling. The Arab region, if we talk of the history of the NDCs, initially they were very modest NDCs, but what we can see since 2016, gradually that the NDCs are becoming more and more detailed, more and more data in the NDCs. In the beginning, there was not even data in some of the NDCs. Now this is something that is developing. There is more, I would say, integration of the NDCs into the policy making also. because all issues related to NDCs and climate were in generally addressed in a kind of silos, separately from the rest of the policy making process. Now the integration is now more and more, visible into these policy making processes, and there is a more integrated policy making that is taking place. So this is, in my opinion, a very important development. Regarding your question now, the main challenges, in my opinion, they start first of all from the policy and the regulatory environment. If you take the regulation regarding green buildings, for example, most of the Arab countries do have green buildings, but they are not mandatory. So that's a main challenge. So you need to move from having just, voluntary green building codes to becoming more mandatory. And here, why it's not very often still left to the choice of the developers, because there are many concerns. First of all, because there is a concern that including all these mandatory green building regulation is going to increase the cost of buildings. And governments don't want to increase the cost of buildings because they consider that this will make housing unaffordable, and that it will have an impact, on affordability of housing. The second other reason is also because there is a big lobbying that is happening from the big developers. Big developers don't want to increase the cost, on their, projects, their real estate projects, and therefore they put a lot of pressure on the policymakers, and they lobby the policymakers in order to make sure that these green buildings don't become mandatory. So there is also this aspect. And there is, of course, as usual, the issue of financing, the access to financing, and how you can facilitate the access to financing for all green buildings, codes, or for cooling technologies. And then there is also the issue of technology itself. Technology is not always available. It has a cost. This technology has to be imported. It's not always localized, and therefore you need to find a way on how to localize these industries in the countries themselves. We do that in our discussions with policymakers, because as the center is the technical arm of the League of Arab States, so we talk to all Arab governments, and we try to enhance to focus on the issue of cooling and energy efficiency by saying that while you are putting these policies in place, you should also think about creating local value and local industries in order to make sure that these technologies are available and they are at an affordable cost, for the developers and for the consumer in general. So this is, in general, of course there are some other issues like capacity building and then accurate knowledge about which kind of regulations to use, and very often when it comes to the cost, for example, of introducing these mandatory regulations, there is a need of pedagogy, there is a need of communication to explain that when you are investing in cooling, or that when you're investing in energy efficiency for buildings, you are actually saving money, because the globe is getting warmer, especially in the Arab region. Temperatures are getting higher and higher. I can tell you that I grew up in Algiers. This is the city where I'm from, and in the 70s and the 80s in Algiers, you didn't need air conditioning. I never had air conditioning in Algiers in my life. But in the past years, it's becoming impossible to live in the summer in Algiers without air conditioning, because the weather is warming up. And so the issue of cooling was left somehow to the consumer himself to think about how to cool his house. But the government was very late at jumping in and trying to solve the issue from a much larger policy making, perspective. Things are changing, but in my opinion, the train is on, and with the NDCs, because we support governments in the region for developing their NDCs also and reviewing them. This is an issue that we are highlighting now automatically in our discussions with the countries that call for our support, you know, for introducing the cooling element into the NDCs. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question, so don't turn off the mic yet. It sounds like there's a lot to do still in the MENA region for moving over to these more sustainable solutions in terms of buildings and cooling. One of the things it sounded to me that there's not a readily available service providers or solution providers, so the private sector is not in place yet to provide those solutions. Was that correct understanding?
It depends on the countries. If you take the countries of the Gulf, for example, now these solutions are available. And if you look at where are the countries where you have more and more centralized or district cooling programs and projects that are being built and developed, it's the GCC countries. Lately, also Egypt has moved and jumped into that field, and Egypt now has the needed, you know, service providers and technologies for that kind of projects. And the new administrative capital, for example, in Cairo, is totally centralized through the cooling is totally centralized. So in some countries like that are somehow advanced in the Arab region, these service providers exist. But if you go to other countries with lower income and lower economic development, then at that moment it becomes a challenge to find and to have the necessary service providers.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I would like to go to Mr. Lee De Lun. Cambodia has put in place a national cooling action plan. Could you tell us a little bit about your experiences with that action plan and how and implementing it? How is it going? Is it easy or is it very difficult?
Thank you for your question regarding to the National Cooling Action Plan. So government of Cambodia is putting the national sustainable cooling solution is the priority, and then we have setting in our national policy and strategy. And also the last one is we have integrated into the NDC 3.0 that we have already submitted to the UNFCCC. So to implement the NCAP, we have to work and coordinate strongly with the other line ministry, also other private sector, and also development partner. So to work with the line ministry, we have especially Ministry of Land Management and Urban Planning. I think he also joined in many sections of the cooling on building. And then Ministry of Health and Ministry of Public Work and other line ministry. And we have forming the working group of the climate change technical working group to conduct this kind of developing this NCAP. And we also regarding to the NCAP in this year, we also integrated to the climate change strategic plan that we have developed for 10 years. So we have integrated NCAP into that policy. Yeah, and also we integrated in the NDC 3.0 both adaptation and also mitigation. And I think this NCAP is very important, and this can provide us a good experience to implement this NCAP. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned that the Ministry of Health has been involved as well. Could you tell us a little bit more? Did you have to drag them in, or were they the one initiating, or how did that collaboration go?
Because our NCAP is focused on 5 sector, on 5 area. One area is regarding to the building cooling, and the second area is regarding to the food cold chain, and third area regarding healthcare cold chain, and fourth area regarding to mobile air condition, and the last one is process cooling. So that's why in the 5 area it also have the healthcare. So that's why we work with the Ministry of Health to conduct this kind of developing this NCAP as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one question that I will come back to a little bit later, but I would like to go over to Kennedy Mateka. So, Kennedy, Kennedy has been working on its green building standards and efficient cooling. Could you tell us a little bit about the key enablers and the gaps that you have noticed when you're building it into the NDC at the same time?
Thank you for this opportunity, and it is true that we have an NDC for Kenya. In it, we have different parts that require different policy interventions in different ways. And of a particular interest is on enhancement of energy efficiency in various aspects of our economy. And one of it is then how then do we realize sustainable heating and cooling. That is how we have it in our country. And therefore, in relations to the issues around sustainable cooling, we developed 2 years ago a national cooling plan which focuses on 4 different sectors. And of particular interest is how then do we bring sustainable cooling in the built environment. We are currently implementing this provision 2 years down the line after the NCAP development. And one of our strategy to develop, to implement the provisions of the NCAP is to mainstream issues around cooling in our national building code. So we 2 months down the line, or rather 5 months down the line, we are now implementing a new building code for the country. And within the new building code, we intentionally made a lot of efforts in terms of enhancement of energy efficiency, as it has been anticipated in the National Cooling Plan and the NDC itself. So what we are looking at is we are creating a further enabling framework within the building code, which we are calling the National Green Building Guidelines, so that we could, and within our building code then remains mandatory provisions that needs to be covered in the process of you coming up with buildings. So the National Green Building Guidelines then forms the basis upon which then how do you mainstream issues around sustainable cooling in different forms, different parts, different sections within the building space. So that is as far as that part is concerned. And why we are doing this is to create an enabling framework so that the investors, so that homeowners, so that each and every part and every person involved in the value chain process then would understand where you are needed most and how you need to go into this. We're also looking at a case of preparing what we are doing there, we are calling market readiness, so that you attract more investment in this area. We have an opportunity in terms of, deploying the best strategies and best technologies. We have different climatic regions in Kenya, creating a different market opportunity in different forms. Whether you talk about this from the coastal region, through the mountain region, through the plains, through the tropics, through the lake region. So that creates an opportunity of different models of sustainable cooling in itself. Thank you very much.
Kennedy, I would still like to ask you about, so then this was now at the national level and building it into the building codes and so on. So when you go down to the local government level, do you have, what's the experience of bringing this information in there and getting it into the practice, and when construction officers at the local level are looking at building plans and so on. Well, what's your experience with bringing it down to the grass level, so grassroots level?
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. We have subnationals in Kenya, and these subnationals are called counties. For us, counties are centers of development. This is where we have devolved most of our functions at a national scale to be done at that level. So we have development controls, strategies, and plans in place to ensure that whatever is in a national policy then is down or implemented at a county or a subnational level. So what we are looking at is how best, as we carry out demonstration projects down with the various counties or the subnationals, how then do we also build capacity of these subnationals to be able to pick up and localize, the intentions of the various policy interventions that we have put in place. So we are building capacity of our counties as a way of ensuring that we prepare them for the different models they may want to adopt from the national policies, and we're also encouraging them to localize and develop, county-based policies or guidelines because of the because of the diversity of the different regions that we do have. So the interventions that are required in the coastal region in terms of cooling may be different from the ones that are required in the tropics regions. And all these regions have different subnationals. And therefore, as we have the national enabling framework in the name of the building code, we have localized different arrangements so that every county or every subnational looks into the national framework in a different way, try to see how then you can localize this conversation, bring on board the right investment in these places, and therefore we are in the process, as we implement our NCAP, we're also seeing a process of also implementing the new building code. And this is where now synergy in terms of policy development and implementation of these policies at that level is concerned. Thank you.
Kennedy, sorry, one more question. In terms of private sector, are the service provider in place that can help with both the building code, implementing it? Are they there, or do we also, like in Dr. Samedi's response, that we also need to build up the private sector to provide those solutions?
Thank you very much. Now, with the enabling policy in place, creates an opportunity for investments. So what we are looking at is that we are scaling up and providing, as a national government, that confidence to our investors to come forward, invest in different ways. We have different models of attracting investment in terms of support. We have several ways of coming up with, we have several incentives that are put in place for various forms of investment in Kenya. We are seeing scale-up numbers of different investors coming in place, especially on and in relations to sustainable cooling. And this is also part our strategic intention to see how best we implement the NCAP itself, and even try to also create jobs around this kind of a conversation. So we are looking at it that the market is to be prepared with the right enabling framework, and that is what we are working on, and we are seeing quite a number of investors coming in place. And the call here is that we want to invite as many of our investors within this space to come forward, invest. There is always space for you. Counties and our subnationals are also ready to provide several incentives, including free land, so that you can create investments and spur some economic conversations in that kind of a space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kennedy. Let me come and get the microphone. Thank you so much. And then I would like to go to Dr. Abdullah Khalif. And I would like to start with a question to you. So in terms of the support that countries need, what are some of the technical support that are most needed to translate those national cooling plans, cooling action plans into on-the-ground action?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we said Somalia had already included its NDC, the cooling agenda in its NDC. So there are already 2 existing supporters which we had been discussing with UNEP and the Cool Coalition. So we already we initiated a program called Be Cool Somalia. And the Be Cool Somalia, we are focusing on a passive cooling and reducing the HFCs, like the introducing of the global warming potential refrigerators, for example. And also selecting several towns, which we are going actually to introduce now, where the IDPs and the most hot places in Somalia. So Be Cool Somalia is a long-term program which we had already initiated with UNEP and the Cool Coalition, and we are focusing on buildings and cold chains, for example. I remember one of the papers which I also worked with, I found like 45–46% of the small farmer produce usually get perished before they get to the market.
How much was that?
46% of the small producer products, like the tomato, I mean the kale, cabbage, everything, usually they perish before they reach to the market. And that means they don't have the facility of, if they could have cold chains where they can keep their produce and everything, could actually support them and increase their livelihood systems. So we see cooling project, passive cooling, as a development process, not necessarily even reducing the heat in the buildings and this kind of things. Another area which we are also thinking now, and the Be Cool project will focus on, is the cold chains for the fishing system and the fisheries, for example, and that is we're working on. So that is the long-term program which we are collaborating now that it is development with UNEP and the Be Cool Coalition. But in the meantime, we are also working on developing the NCAP Somalia, National Cooling Action Plan for Somalia, which we had already started with UNEP and Cool Coalition. There's already, I think the planning stage of that activity had already started, and that NCAP will be soon developed. Our target is within the 5–6 months to come, the country will have the NCAP, National Cooling Action Plan. And that means will result in now developing the policies and the act for the parliament to really improve it. So we are working on those 2 main things. It's a short-term and long-term programming system. NCAP is a short-term activity. Be Cool Somalia, which had started, is a long-term program. And we are already focusing on 4 specific areas where, for example, let's say Galkayo, Dolo, Kismayo, and the Bosaso, which are those 4 main cities, which we are going to actually also to introduce within the Be Cool Somalia project. So that is what we are now doing.
Excellent. So the Somali NDC has an interesting aspect that for every mitigation action, they also seek for adaptation co-benefits. Is that how you're translating it into getting it moving forward, or can you tell us a little bit about this connection between mitigation and adaptation?
Very interesting and very true. And when we were developing our NDC, we said, let us develop this NDC in one major principle. And that major principle, which we have agreed when we've been doing a series of consultations, was every mitigation action must have an adaptation benefit. And the agenda of the cooling was built on that very simple thing. If you read our NDC, which is very, very concise document, you only need to read 20 pages for Somalia's NDC. It is entirely 38 pages. And when you look at from 39 pages is the transparency and how we developed the NDC. So you don't need from 35 to 51 page, you don't need actually to read. That's our process. But from page 5, 6 to page 38, when you read, and particularly if you read the mitigation section, what you can see, an adaptation section, you can see the greenhouse gas emission for Somalia, usually 86%, it comes only 2 sectors. And those 2 sectors are agriculture and the land and land use change. Simple as that. So when we talked about land use and the land use change, if we are going to do, for example, land rehabilitation, afforestation, and the rehabilitation of land, it has a direct co-benefit of adaptation, because when you regenerate land, usually you are introducing biodiversity system. And when you introduce the biodiversity system, that means you are increasing your adaptation capacity for the country. And in addition to that, when you look at the diseases that has been caused by the heat, we also have like a health section in our NDC, and it is actually one of the priorities, and nutrition when you look at it. And when you look the IDPs and the people in mobility, and you can see how heat affects that, and you put this in our Be Cool Somalia, we are also thinking like bringing a low, reducing, for example, those tents where the IDPs is using. That means we are increasing their health system. And when we increase their health system and reduce the disease-affected people, you are also increasing their adaptation capacity to actually do on their farming. So we built this NDC for Somalia exactly on that principle. Every mitigation action must have an adaptation benefit. Yeah.
Excellent. When you talk with private sector, you probably don't talk about mitigation or adaptation. You're talking probably about the business case for how we don't lose 46% of the agriculture part. Is there a good business case there?
Absolutely, and the NDC, again, there is no stone which had been left unturned. Private sector and carbon market is also an agenda in our NDC. And we didn't leave it like that. For example, 15th of October, there was a big business community conference in Mogadishu, where I personally was asked to come and speak on the correlation between the private sector and our NDC. So they're talking about energy efficiency, they're talking about land rehabilitation and mangrove setting up. They're talking about a, let's say, big estate farming system, and all those kind of activities that the private sector is focusing is actually being included in the NDC. So the NDC is like 11.5 billion, 6.3 is adaptation, 5.17. It's 45-55% of the adaptation, mitigation adaptation. And the private sector took this document actually, and they are seeing the niche where they are actually trying to focus in it. And we are not only focusing on those big private sector things. We are in our NDC is also focusing on the diaspora and people. So it is there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And finally, I would like to come to Uboho Ekpo. And Nigeria is known for major growth in terms of the economy, the population. How do we keep up? How do we keep up with getting with the sustainable solutions for buildings and cooling before it's done? Because it's happening so quickly there. How do we do it?
Okay, so good and fine. So Nigeria, for us, I think we adopt both top-bottom and bottom-top approach in addressing lack of cooling infrastructures. And that is why when developing our NCAPs as at 2022, yeah. We had a consultative kind of process where we had stakeholders, you know, we gathered them and ensured that their voices were heard, all right? And at that point in time, the first thing that came to our mind was about the Kigali Amendment and also the minimum energy performance standard, all right? But we noticed that it only spoke to, the NCAPs only addressed just the Kigali Amendment, all right? That's both the two components, which is the phasing down of the F gases, the hydrofluorocarbons, and also energy efficient appliances of both of the rack sector. So moving forward, for the NDC, anyways, before the NDC 3.0 was reviewed, as in the NDC 2.0 was reviewed, now NDC 3.0, and the cooling was being captured in the NDC 2.0, where in a IPPU sector, that's IPPU of the IPCC, that is the industrial product and other industrial processes and other product use, where that was it was identified as a priority sector for Nigeria in our NDC 2.0. But moving forward to NDC 3.0, we needed to increase our ambitions. All right, now we've seen that for cooling being a very critical component for humans. All right, in all humans, like for us here, without cooling, we can't breathe, we can't be comfortable. Your brain will be weak, and then without cooling, you can't preserve your food. So it's cross-cutting. So we also identify that it has both mitigation and adaptation, benefits. Benefits. So in NDC 3.0, we now took it forward to integrate it into our agriculture cold chains, all right, with the help of from the commitment, Nigeria's commitment to the GCP, all right, to the GCP, because Nigeria is a signatory to the GCP, the Global Cooling Pledge. So we took it a step forward, and when we looked at the objectives of the GCP, we saw that the GCP is very broad. What the objectives of the GCP is quite broad. Cross-cutting is a multi-sectoral kind of approach, where it's not just about phasing down of the F gases, not just about energy efficiency, but also about the building codes, all right? Also the building codes, also passive cooling, and then the nature-based solution. Because Nigeria, we don't have to wait for the active cooling alone. We need to deploy a lot of measures to ensure that even to the most vulnerable groups in the country, that cooling, can reach the most vulnerable, and to the least man on the street, all right, the farmers, the artisans, all of them can access cooling. So that is where we are.
Thank you. In terms of the government's work with the private sector, so how can you collaborate to advance the innovation and the uptake of these solutions? Do you have any experience that you can share with us there? Yeah, so in terms of the collaboration between private sector and the government, and together advancing this, do you have any experiences that you can share with us on how private sector and government can work together?
Yeah. So for the past couple of years, when the NCAPs, I will talk about the NCAPs now, when it was launched, 2022. So we had a lot of collaborations with partners, UNIDO, especially on awareness creation. UNIDO came in to partner with the government to ensure that most people are aware of, number one, not just facing down or facing out of these F gases, but also the life cycle, the lifetime cycle, of the product, all right? Because it's not all about facing down and retrieving the gases. But the real, process, and then we had a lot of NGOs that came in also to partner with the government, and then we also worked with the customs that are at the borders, the customs service of Nigeria that are at the borders, in ensuring that we control the importation of appliances that don't meet with our standards. All right, and then we also have people like Daikin Technologies that have come in to the country, of recent times to introduce us to very efficient refrigerators, right, and air conditioners. So that is where we are.
Excellent. Those import standards, they are very important. Okay, so we still have a little bit of time for a couple of questions more. Kennedy, I'm aware that you may need to go soon. So when that happens, thank you so much for your participation, and we'll meet you in Kenya again. But stay as long as you can. So now we could do a opportunity for a question or two from the audience, or from Scott or Amanda. So we got the experience from country operations and the support to country operations. Anybody with a question? Samir.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and thanks for all of the panelists. I just want to connect somehow the let's say the net, the way that how I see it. It's all started in especially a long time ago when we started to find the synergies between the NCAP and the NDCs. But I would just like to give one clear example of Somalia here. Since we are talking about action, and also I would like to also refer to David on this regard. In April we had so the first element, the power of collaboration. We partnered with the NDC partnership on providing a training on the NDC cooling guide for the in-country facilitators. Somalia has been a signatory country, but we never really worked with the one who is really facilitating the NDC. Abdullahi was there at the right time, at the right moment, and then he said, okay, I would like really to make a use of this. And then immediately he integrated the commitment for the Global Cooling Pledge into the NDC. This resulted immediately in, imagine what? Just to go for projects. And then there was a donor also who was very much interested to have the Be Cool Somalia. And this is like the power of, starts with a collaboration and then goes to the country, and then we move forward. The same way, we partnered with RCRE. Almost 1 year ago, we started our collaboration with the Regional Center on Renewables, and to just develop a contextualized methodology for the MENA, as he mentioned, only for MENA region, just contextualized methodology for the NCAP. And this resulted in more countries they want. We started to pilot in Morocco and Tunisia, and they have already received some requests, for example, from Algeria and so on. And same for also for Lido. At the beginning, we started with in Cambodia with the NDC, and then for the Climate National Strategy, and so on and so forth. Same for Kenya. So it all starts with just power of collaboration with other partner agency, and then we go for the country. And then I would like really right now to take the next step, and would encourage my colleagues at the solutions providers how they could come in, and that's my always question. I don't know the answer how it could be, but we want to find an entry point for the private sector and solutions provider to come into this, to turn this kind of policy into really implemented projects, especially on one of the things for Be Cool Somalia. And I would like to have Be Cool in Cambodia, Be Cool in Tunisia, Morocco, Be Cool in Kenya. That's my really dream. Be Cool in Nigeria. Hopefully we can do all of that together, and I would like to thank them for all of the insights.
Thank you, Samir. Scott, so what can we do? I'm going to come to you first, and then I'll come back in here. Scott, what could we do to help the private sector to step into this space and be an active partner in shaping this space?
I think we heard a couple of ideas already. One is we need the way to accelerate and scale the solutions that exist is one of the ways would be that government-owned buildings would be the best first demonstration projects. And so I heard that from the panelists already. Some of the government buildings and public buildings are being used to actually introduce some of the solutions. I think that's really important. We have to have some sector that's willing to adopt the solutions to prove that it works to the citizens. That's number one. Number two is we still need to, and it was a question of mine, is around skilled workforce. We will need a plan around training people to install the solutions, to maintain the solutions when they're installed. So we can't forget that. Even though building codes are really important and the demonstration spaces are important, we will have to add to that finding a way to upskill some people so that these systems can be installed.
Thank you, Scott. Again, sorry, before I'm coming to you, Kennedy, I know again that you need to leave. Would you like to take the mic still before you have to go? Anything that you would like to add?
Yes, mine is just, I believe by now we are aware that governments in a better way have done their parts. Most of them have the NDCs speaking to NCAPs, and therefore, and I believe this kind of commitments coming from different governments in different ways is an indication that all these governments and these institutions are ready to embrace the private sector, to come in and invest. The call here is that it is your time to turn and come forward and invest, not just on the countries that are represented here, but even more. So that commitment by different governments through NDCs, through the NCAPs, is about time to see how best the private sector needs to be accelerated to come forward and invest. And in Kenya, we are very much ready to welcome each and every one of you. We have new investors coming on board, but we want to have more, not just in Kenya, but in most of the countries that need this kind of technologies. Thank you.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya is open for business, right? Okay, so here you would also like to take the floor again.
I just wanted to jump on my friend's intervention regarding our partnership with UNEP. We organized last month, if you remember, a workshop in Cairo where we had 70 participants and representing 15 countries of the Arab region, 15 out of 22 countries. So just give you an idea about the interest, about this subject. Where we presented the NCAP methodology and how we could support them to put in place their NCAP. Countries that were present and that had already developed their NCAPs, like Morocco, presented their experience. And what we can say from these kind of events is that this is how you can communicate to other countries, proven experiences with proven results, and this is how it's going to trickle down to the other countries. And following that workshop, we already are receiving requests from other member countries in the Arab region in order to support them in developing their national cooling action plans. So talking and spreading the news and spreading the experiences among the member countries is very important, and we need to keep that going on.
Excellent. And final question, and that comes to Lido, Uboho, and Abdullah. So it's for all three of you, and I'll come one by one. So if you know that your wish would come true, what do you wish you had to make sure that we can advance the buildings and the cooling agenda in your respective countries? And I'm going to come to you, Uboho, first. If you could wish for anything, what would you wish you had to advance this agenda?
I wish, okay, fine, good and fine. The urbanization in Nigeria is growing very rapidly, and the right framework, the framework is already on ground. We have existing regulatory and policies on ground that supports the building and the cooling, you're right? The NCAPs, the building codes, the National Energy Building Codes are already on ground. But what we need now is the right technology. We need technical assistance. We have been talking with the Green Building Council of Nigeria on this, and they're really much interested in retrofitting, all right, homes, commercial buildings, residential buildings. We need technology, we need capacity building, we need financing, all right? We need more partners in the room. So I think that will help us to scale up what we already have on ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and perhaps that connects to Scott's point as well, that perhaps public buildings and that retrofitting and learning by doing in those, building up the workforce, that could be a way to get you the technology and the assistance. Okay, Lido, what about you? What would you wish for to make your work easier for advancing sustainable cooling solutions?
Yes, my wish is so short. So to resolve this such kind of cooling solution, I want to be, the world is green. The world is green, will be become a cooler. But actually, we will try step by step in Cambodia. We try to plant the tree. We try to developing the policy and strategy. But right now, we are the cooling solution. We are also integrating into the building code that we are now Ministry of Land Management. They are developing this building code, and also the energy of in the building code as well. So at the national level, we are trying to put the cooling solution and also the new technology into the building code. And then the next time, the building will be go through this policy and strategy. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Lido. And finally, Abdullahi, to you, if you would have a wish, what would help your work? What is it that you need?
Yeah, two things. One.
Oh, two things.
Yes.
Oh.
One.
Go for it.
One is my work, and that one is the partnership. It's very simple, of working together. But my wish to see is, I look at Somalia's GDP, and the Somalia's GDP, 67-70% comes from the rural livelihood system. And rural livelihood system, I mean the livestock. So having cooling system, I mean the cool chains, because Somalia exports livestock, live and the meat both. So if we can make a corridor, cool corridor for Somalia, and we can utilize better for that livelihood system, that is my wish to see. And that means it will relate to the country's economic development.
Excellent. A quick note on a cooling corridor. So in India, between Punjab and Karnataka, there is a 2,500 kilometer long cooling corridor. So let's talk about that as an example. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't quite sure how long the event would take, so now it was about 70 minutes. So thank you so much to all our panelists, our speakers, and all participants. And keep coming back to the Cooling and Building Pavilion for more solutions that you can directly benefit people, that are investable, and help us with mitigation and adaptation. Thank you so much to the team, and until next time. Oh, and let's do a quick picture here as well.
Yeah.